Okay, we're getting close to the actual end here. A few weeks ago, recorded I recorded this book, Numinosum, and then I heard from my friend John Tritica, who actually listened to the whole thing. God bless him. And he said that he made a couple of suggestions. One was that I spend time, and I don't just read straight through, that I spent some time actually, like this was a reading and I was addressing the audience, which is easier said than done when there isn't actually an audience, but I get the point. And the other thing he suggested was that I break it up into 3 parts and read each one separately so that someone can listen to one part without being exhausted by my logoria. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to re-record this thing along those lines. So this is an unexpected addition to the Book of Uncertain. I had not anticipated this book, but certain things happened, and it became absolutely essential to write through this material. A Numinosum is a numinous event. And the subtitle here is An Alchemical Reverie in a Blakean Mood. So that throws 2 big wrenches into the works right away. Alchemical and Blakean. Those of you who know me know I adore Blake. And in fact, I'm part of a very interesting reading group right now. We're led by George Quasha, where we're reading through Blake's work. What can I say? Alchemy. Well, let me read you the Blake epigraph first. They dance around the dying and they drink the howl and groan. They catch the shrieks in cups of gold. They hand them to one another. These are the sports of love. And these the sweet delights of amorous play. Tears of the grape, the death sweat of the cluster, the last sigh of the mild youth who listens to the luring songs of Luva. And it has a sort of explanatory passage at the beginning. Numinosum is an attempt to write the first operation of the alchemical opus, calcinatio, in embodied language and human terms. Calcinatio is generally agreed to be the opening operation of the alchemical opus, though the overall number and order of operations seems to be largely a matter of the alchemist's imagination. Calcinatio is the fire operation that arises from frustrated desire, which leads to the release of primal eros. Identified with salt, it dries out the flood of prima materia that originates the process and is connected to further operations that include solutio, putrefactio, separatio, and conjunctio. It transforms the blackness of negredo, death, into white ash. The ash signifies mourning, despair, atonement, and the incorruptible body which has survived the purifying fire. White ash is the necessary component for repeated operations that bring more and more of the prima materia into light and eventually create conditions for the chemical wedding that produces the philosopher's stone, the ultimate goal of the quest. I'm pretty sure that most of you, if you're actually listening to me, a very small minority of people probably already know about alchemy. But let me just say this in case there's somebody out there who doesn't understand, that alchemy is far more than a predecessor to chemistry carried out by delusional people trying to make gold out of lead. It turns out, and it was Carl Jung who did the work that actually reclaimed this material, reading through many ancient texts on alchemy. to come to the conclusion that it was actually a psychic, spiritual process that had to do with getting your shit together, basically. So the process is one in which that begins with a conjunction, a conjunctio between opposites that is so close that there's no definition. So there's nothing that can be done. The process then begins with subjecting it to water, flooding it, so that it becomes a solution, putrefying it, and separating the parts, and then drying it out, so that what you're left with, as it says here, is the body, the incorruptible body which has survived. Now, in terms of psychology, or Jungian psychology, I mean, not that I know that much about it, but allow me, it has to do with reclaiming facets of the unconscious that are determining your behavior and bringing them into the light of consciousness and reclaiming them. And as you do that, you get your shit together. So that's the process. That's the process of alchemy. Now, this first stage, called calcinatio, it's calcination, anyway, has to do with subjecting the original union to intense heat. And the heat, well, you'll hear in the poem. Numinosum, an alchemical reverie in a Blakean mood. I heard a strong voice crying out to me, "Man, get away from here before all the gates are shut, for the moment of closure is come." Ostanes. Be glad you have suffered the suffering which you never suffered before. Aristotle. 1. Leaden skies muffle bay's dull sheen, fire at the seam, edge slit, light dark water sky, last convulsive gasp of together's elusive incandescent bond. World splits in two, gaping hole excision leaves of further iterations of ineffable aura of face etched in mind, in heart, in soul's bottomless free fall through belly's pit, and tears. Absent touch suffuses dark with dread, erupts into eyes nothing, ruins in wake of well, swell and pitch, batters the wall, surge from below, chaotic, churn cresting. 2. The beatific concubine foretold in the annals of anguished anima encounters appears out of the blue, hot in shimmering white, resplendent, ripe, moist, promise open to romance in love's palace, something beautiful, tender, and sweet and sad, a do-si-do with Aphrodite calling the steps, passion's reward in love's eyes other. Eyes within eyes animate chthonic surge, her outstretched hands brim with secrets promise further knowledge, spectre of love's wild ways beyond fidelity's bond. And who can say no to a little sweet passion when the moon's fat, blood runs hot, eyes smolder across eons, offer tousled sheets, languid sun-drenched mornings long ago, warmth of tangled limbs alive with the beginning of the world. Three. This just popped into my mind. I was walking with Case up at the cottage down Gray Road 1. Um, you know, I like the idea of playing with composition, not locking yourself into one particular. I mean, there's occasions when you want to lock yourself into a mode, but you don't have to do that. And this is a situation where there's so much going on so many levels, that it just seems stupid to like try to make it all the same. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fight of the century, an epic grudge match between old, you could even say primordial opponents. In this corner, weighing in at a trim 126 fighting pounds, wearing a cute little white number, and with a record of 956 wins and 1 loss, the terrible mother of flowers, looking to make up for that loss and finally get into the marriage bed. And in this corner, a little paunchy at 200 pounds, not to mention almost bald, wearing all black and blissfully unaware there's even a fight, is our hero, disconcerted at news of rising waters and the sudden dissolution of the ring, not to mention the arena, leaves him quietly flailing in turbulent ectoplasmic mind surges while being pummeled relentlessly against the ropes. Love in the Ruins is a humdinger. Lights up lapsed pledges of regular dream with a touch of oracular wonder, a spark and escape into gold-flecked eyes, liquid welcome to goddesses' imaginary bedroom, where imaginary words become entangled in sweaty sheets of unbound desire, a burst dam torrential, later entered into the record as marvelous and rare. A nice literary formulation omits ravenous ghost surge chaos out of the pit to feed off eons of loss, drive love into abandoned corners, possessed by history's shattered dream and tortured soul's continual song of imaginary love's death in sweat-soaked sheets of imagination. Not to knock imagination, or hot and sweaty words that obviously hit their mark, love, the beatific concubine nurtured in her alembic of light, love she thought she knew, essence of love and friendship, but blind to love's black sun and the terrible mother of flowers who waited 1,000 years in the depths where image churns, banished with angelic help from the marriage bed, thrown into the dark, expelled from home, except for sweet memories of drives in gypsy, her deep blue 52 Bel Air ragtop through brilliant desert wildflowers super bloom. She waited patiently for a spark in the gloom, and when Aphrodite cloud surrounded them, felt sea flow in flesh, old magic surge intumescent between, the terrible mother of flowers rose, unseen from depths, trailing shadow, alive with hope to finally fill the unfillable hole of want in her soul. To be freed from the nightmare hunger, she went to them, lavished them with all the beauty death had stolen, with love's gleam robbed by fathers who had caught her in a net, nailed her to the ground with nails that wailed and shrieked, demanded her love, demanded she give up her hunger for theirs, ripped brief, sweet touch of freedom's beauty from her soul, left her only deep passion's ultimate bliss promise. And grief haunts heart with light's assured meaning's elusive flicker in black, dark-burning spirit flame, whatever that is in heart's jewel's center, it sure isn't a little sad, And when romance shows up, it's too late. The split world moans with pain of untranslatable fissure. I don't think there's a lot that needs to be explained. 5. The way in resists easy access through normal channels of thought, whatever that word swirl of meanings, focus and unfocus and over and over. No, just look inside and there it is, vicissitudes of primordial eros, plain as day for all the world to gawk at and then run like hell before it sees you too. And waters awaken at the edge of something almost visible in the swirl of shadow, wails fear, rage alone with dark desires, tongues of erethic fires set, heart ablaze with her sight's inappropriate soul touch, releases chaos power surge through churning black filth alive with mercurial death's bounty. Ravenous for love's taste, hordes of dead reach out to touch the wound, gaze on image of lost love's perfect grip on the heart, twists it into excruciating forms of desire, doomed to fantasy's bloodless embrace of the burning heart of love, announces dismembered mental operations, hijacked imaginations, union beyond union, merges heart's unspeakable joy in her return. There's an epigraph here. Within the flower itself there grows the gnawing canker. Where honey is, there gall, there swelling breast, there chancre. Michael Meyer. Love's poison seeps through passion's weave, Nessus's shirt, secret gift to the imaginal field where desire's net hauls in two souls, dewy-eyed, celebrants of an old story shadowed by an older one they can't see, blinded by golden haze suffuses eyes, loosens limbs, released into thinking of Aphrodite's sweet madness, blind to the elder power, dwells behind great Mother Cybele, lover of her own son, mutilated and killed by desire's spell. Catches them up in its whirl, sweeps them into a dream of elated yearning of cosmic proportions, frantic release into roar of her presence. Magna Mater, lion-drawn chariot, wild music, ecstatic dancers intoxicated with her power promises, sweet meld in lovers' fused union, where others secretly recalled from death slip around the single pair, embrace them, wrap them in love's web, feed on them, bind them in numinous delusions of shadow fleshes, dream of repair, rejected rejection, her and her and her and her flocked to love's flame, love's fused self, love's dark jewel burns in heart's core's furious furnace, need for touch, need to know, imaginary mouth gently encloses erect fantasy's sanctified possession, licks swollen, wet, unreal mound of creation, feeds desire for more, for first beloved's incestuous touch, for her gold-flecked eyes still shine through glamour, steel breath, filled with sea's surge across table holds love locked in mingled, undifferentiated, imaginal, fused, fetal, libidinous, oceanic, elemental, mass roiling orgasm surge from beneath. she finds sweet, a little sad, till love's wave swallows both, one and one, one in one, release and flow, being through being, merge, merge, words tangled clutch and suck, whose mouth, whose fantasy slips into words' body all the way in till flesh and flesh leaves no in, no out, just passion's bliss bursts, explodes, in around, heave of cellular sea crash, then darkness. Who it was am been. Seven. Who shows up for the wedding is never exactly known, though you can always count on Mom to spice things up, though even then, which Mom do you mean, that one or that one? And the beatific concubine with gentle smile, gold-flecked eyes, brings more to the game than she knows. Her later claim it was never about me joins cacophony, rises through rent mind, reeks of sulphur, howls of pain, loss beyond measure, abandoned. But none of that now, in the wedding bed, where soft love eyes peer into each other via zeros and ones magic spell, lost in heaven's depths across vast distance of fantasy, weave mutual words in and out of poems' ecstatic bursts of caressed flesh on screen's lattice, worship at the altar of love's goddess, welcome her into figurative arms, imagination of another stokes the fire, smolders in Lauren Bacall's front seat, kiss with Bogart. I liked that. I'd like more. Or Burt Lancaster and Deborah Kerr, lip-locked beast with two backs awash in wild eternity roars around them, passion embraced within passion. Though move over and make room for the rest of the gang soon disturbs dream of hot smooch in the surf, head over heels indicating an uncertain lurch into a zone of unexpected intensity on love's field's uneven ground, stretches from sun to moon, where the difference between just plain love, which is in you, and soon turns into deeply care and affectionately, nice and full of light and so on, and being in love, caught in its grip, lifted high, face smashed into the sand, mouth and nose filled with grit and water, pinned breathless, flipped 3 times and dumped in a school of undines that torment you with visions carried from depths, long harbored pain of love's dark absence, terrible mother of flowers, and the other one who fell in love with Attis, the shepherd, her son, wrapped him in passion, embraced his beauty, stroked his strong limbs, till he cut off his nuts and died, which may explain the difference yes and no makes, with a formula whose evasive disillusion leads to head-spinning oscillations of world composition and eventual liquefaction in disordered orientational bipolar whack-a-mole jobs, relentless caring. Okay, that's the first third. What can I say? It's all there, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, alchemy it's the discipline is fascinating when you think about it in terms of mental processes, psychological, I guess. I'm not crazy about that word, but I guess that was a study of the psyche, right? And that's definitely where we are, deep in the psyche, and the psyche's processes that go on regardless of what you think is going on. there seems to be a lot of disagreement about various terms in the world of psychology, and not just between like Freudians and behaviorists and Jungians and whatnot, but within within the school of people who call themselves Jungians, there's many different ways of looking at the material, the same material that Jung looks at. Mostly it agrees to use the word unconscious, although we don't really have any idea what the unconscious is, except we know it by its manifestations in our behavior, in our emotions, in the way you suddenly feel a certain way in a certain circumstance. I don't think there's any. I mean, I know I've heard from some people who say there is no unconscious, and I'm just like, well, if that's what your unconscious is telling you, that's fine with me. But it's certainly a mystery, a great mystery. The whole world of mind, in all of its depths and crannies and corners and manifestations. And Eros is the fundamental power that fires up the whole works and fuels it. And sometimes, given the remnants of the relationships that bob up out of the dark and become you, because they are you, even though you're not expecting that particular you to be you. There they are. What are you going to do? Okay, there'll be more of this. I'm going to do the other two sections. So thank you, John Tritica, for your suggestion, and later.